Welcome to the Heidi Thorne Show. I'm your host, Heidi Thorne, and in this podcast, I share my real-world self-publishing and small business experience with you. So let's get started with today's show. Now, today we're going to talk about the editing process, and I'm going to encourage you not to ask for editing surgery. What do I mean by that? I get a lot, I'm not kidding you, a lot of inquiries on the platform where I offer my editing services. And it's for custom quotes, and they want me to bundle together editing and proofreading as one process. Some of them also ask for a critique with that, and I have to return a reply that says, okay, we need to take a step back. We're going to start at a completely different place. Most of the time, they're asking for editing, and a lot of authors don't really know what that entails. And they have some idea that it might be some slicing and dicing of their manuscript, and that it will all be pretty and better when they're done. It's like going to the doctor. When you just ask for editing services right out of the gate, it's like going to your doctor and saying, hey, doc, I need heart surgery. Let's start there. Of course not. What is your doctor going to do? He or she is going to reply to you, let's do some testing and evaluation first before we start cutting you open. Well, it's kind of the same with your book manuscript. I want to be able, as an editor, to be the person who does the diagnostics, who says, okay, here are the areas that we really need to concentrate on to fix your manuscript. Instead of just me going in and taking it apart, I need to know more about what you're trying to do with your book, who's your audience. I need to know a lot of different things about you, just as your doctor would want to know a lot about you before they do any surgery. And I think part of the problem too is that a lot of authors don't really understand that there are different varieties of editing too. Now, the one that's most common is what's called line editing. And usually that means just correcting the manuscript for the structure, the flow, how the chapters read, those sorts of things, as well as how well ideas are expressed. And so that is considered line editing. Now, there's another type of editing, and this is for manuscripts that really need a lot of work. In other words, they really do need a lot of surgery. And that's usually called developmental editing. In these cases, the manuscript is not in really good shape, and it needs a lot of work. Now, typically in a developmental edit, there might be stages of editing, meaning that on a first pass, the editor will put it into as good a shape as they can. The author needs to go through it, and then there might be another round of it after the author has reviewed and made any changes that they want to make to it after the editor goes through with it. And then there's some that I find who only need what's called copy editing. In common vernacular, it's often called proofreading. Copy editing, proofreading, generally the same thing. Now, copy editing or proofreading is really just a light cleanup of a manuscript to make sure that it conforms to the standards of the language it is written in. So, for example, that would look at things like punctuation and spelling and word use and how paragraphs are structured and those sorts of things. Does it, have all the right pieces in the book in terms of like a table of contents? Does it include all of the chapters in there? Does that all match up? There's a lot of levels of proofreading too, and then proofreading actually has several stages. And I think that's one of the things too that authors don't understand is that the editing process, whether that's line editing, proofreading, copy editing, you're going to be doing probably several rounds of that, especially if your manuscript is in really rough shape. And I don't think most people are prepared for that. After each round of editing, I don't care what type it is, you are going to go back and look at what your editor did, and you're going to accept or reject the changes. It's your final work. So you have complete control over that. You don't have to go with what your editor says, although usually your editor is making suggestions in your best interest. They're not trying to feel superior or make you feel bad or anything like that. They're really trying to create the best product for your readers. So here's how I usually start the editing process with the authors that I work with, and a lot of other editors work the same way. So I just want to give you a heads up on that so you know what you're buying. The first step is a critique, and I go through the manuscript with a fine-tooth comb. I'm not going to look at all of the nitty-gritty bits of it. I look at the overall manuscript in terms of, does the message work? Is it appropriate for your audience? Who is your audience? I look at the book title. Is the title good for the material that you're trying to present? I look at the marketing challenges that you're going to face with your book. And only at that point can I give you an idea of what would be next in the editing process, whether that's more of just a light line edit or it's a complete developmental edit because it needs a lot of work. And I can't just tell you, oh, it needs an edit. There's lots of different types of that. So you need to really rely on your editor who's doing the critique to kind of give you some direction as to what you're going to need. And in fact, at this point, I've gotten so many of these inquiries that what I'm thinking of doing is taking the editing and proofreading services off my page that offers those services, just so that everyone will start with the critique, and then I'll do a custom quote for your work after that initial critique is done. So don't be surprised if you wander over to my book editing services pages and you see critique and you're thinking, well, doesn't she do anything else? That's just the first step. So don't do editing surgery on your manuscript, or don't ask for it, because sometimes you may not need it either. What I found, here's something interesting I found. The manuscripts that are in the best shape are usually from the authors who are most worried about doing multiple rounds of editing. They're so concerned that they are going to get the best product out there that they'll, even if it's in really good shape, and I tell them after the critique, I'm like, really, you just need to look it over to make sure it's grammatically correct and all that, and you'll probably be ready to go. And some of them are just, they're like, no, I really want to go through all of the stages. Like, well, you're the boss, so we can do whatever you'd like. And there's that situation too. So again, we don't really know what you're going to need in terms of surgery or care for your manuscript until we can do a diagnostic. So that's a good tip for you, especially as we're getting towards the end of the year. As I'm recording this, and a lot of you may be thinking about getting your book done either before the end of the year or as your New Year's project. And so you need to have an idea of what's going to be the next step in that whole process. So I hope you have found this helpful. And if you have, I would appreciate it if you would go over to iTunes and rate and review the Heidi Thorne show. It really, really does help. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Heidi Thorne Show on whatever platform you like to consume podcasts on, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, the video version on YouTube, or you can listen to it on your Alexa with the AnyPod Alexa skill. So make sure you subscribe, because in early January 2019, I'm going to be publishing the 2018 results of the self-publishing survey, and trust me, you do not want to miss an episode on this. Some very, very interesting results are coming through as I'm doing the analysis, so you don't want to miss an episode of that, so please subscribe. Also, if you have author friends, definitely share the Heidi Thorne Show on social media. That would be much appreciated. So thank you so much for listening and for your support. I'll look forward to talking with you again in the next episode. And in the meantime, have a great day.